Welcome to Stop Wasting Your Wine, a wine review podcast dedicated to helping you discover great wines with great value for every occasion.
Today, we are honored to be joined by Priyanka French, the winemaker at Ghost Block Estate Wines, where she is bringing a fresh vision rooted in sustainability, precision, and respect for Napa Valley's terroir. A graduate of the University of California, Davis, with a master's degree in viticulture and enology, Priyanka has honed her craft in renowned wine regions across the world, including Bordeaux, Burgundy, and New Zealand, before returning to Napa Valley to focus on estate-driven wines. Her approach emphasizes authenticity in expression, letting the character of each vineyard speak clearly through the wines. At Ghost Block, she leads the production of single vineyard Sauvignon Blanc, Cab Sauvignon, and Zinfandel, sourced from the family's organically farmed vineyards in Yountville and Oakville. Hopefully I'm saying Yountville correctly. Okay, perfect. I got a thumbs up. Guided by a multi-generational legacy and a deep connection to the land, Priyanka is dedicated to crafting wines of elegance, balance, and distinction that honor both heritage and innovation. Priyanka, welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you. And thank you so much for that very kind introduction.
Well, there's a lot in there. We wanted to make sure that we highlighted such a cool path and just everything there that we want to dig into and learn a lot about. So want to make sure we got it right, Priyanka.
No, you did. You did. Thank you.
Yeah, when we learned you were coming on the show, we did a little deep dive and, like digging through everything. It's like, a lot of times we hear like, oh, this person studied in this one place or this person studied in this one place. And going through your bio, we're like, oh, wow. Oh, there's a lot here. So like we're excited, I'm excited to dig into your past. So, so before we get into the heavy questions, I would just like to start off a little bit. And one of the first things we always ask folks when they come on, if you don't mind sharing, if you can just kind of think back to the very beginning, when is that moment that you kind of figured out that winemaking is what you're going to go into?
Oh boy, when I was young and naive. No, it was actually, it was a very special moment. And I really think of, I'm a romantic. I grew up in India, so Bollywood is very much a part of my life. So, you talk about meet cutes, for example, in movies here. And I like to think that my meeting of, wine and knowing about wine was my meet cute. And so studying in university, I chose to do food engineering and technology. It was a kind of an up and coming field. There was a lot of international, multinational companies coming into India for food manufacturing. So I thought it was a cool thing to do. And then slowly got disillusioned over my first 2 years as I worked with Nestle at a chocolate factory. And, I realized it was all about uniforms and hairnets. I also did get to do a lot of quality control on chocolate. And a couple of months of doing that, you get on the scale and you're like, not the best life decision.
Totally.
And then after that, did food retail and looked at the dairy industry. And I was looking at all of these things going, I really should have thought about this before I decided to just get into it. And along the way, as we were learning about just what this could encompass, we went to Sula Vineyards in Nasik in India. And we happened to visit it through harvest. So, it was... You had all the aromatics. People were talking about the process, and it wasn't just this rigorous hazard analysis, quality control kind of discussion. There was this level of artistry. There was they were talking about what's the style and what we're looking for. And I loved that intersection that this product was already starting to tell me the story of. And then we finished the visit in their tasting room, which the sun was setting, there was a lake right in front of it. And I was like, I could do this. For life. And so that was kind of my moment of, I think I'm going to do it.
A little more inviting than the factory floor at Nestle, I would imagine. Yeah.
I just wanted to escape hairnets. I just didn't want hairnets to be a part of my life moving forward.
Totally.
And what a great excuse to get away from hairnets, right?
Drink
I guess I'll go drink wine.
Yeah.
It's funny. We were all beer, like Aaron and I. Colin has a little bit more training in wine. Aaron and I were a lot more familiar with beer. And when we decided years ago we wanted to start a podcast, we were like, oh, we could do one on beer, but we had the same idea where we're like, that's not going to be good for us in the long run. We need to pick something a little healthier and a little bit more artistic and let us into the wine. I'm so
What do you
grateful. So I don't want to, I feel like I might be jumping a couple steps here, but looking at just, we talked about Burgundy, we talked about New Zealand. You have been involved in the winemaking process in all of these amazing regions. So kind of bringing it a little bit into the Ghost Block realm, gosh, your time at UC Davis, I mean, come on. Just kind of curious, how does all of that roll together to kind of shape what you're doing today at Ghost Block?
I mean, I think there's a piece of every experience, because everywhere that I was fortunate to work at and kind of, follow this career path, if you will, really helped me focus and decide on what I wanted to do. So Burgundy, for example, was my first introduction to site-driven winemaking. You think
Mm,
about terroir, you think about vineyard specificity. There's not a better
hmm.
region in the world to talk about that, when you have vineyards that
Sure.
are literally 10 feet from each other, and yet show such distinctive profiles. And where I worked in Burgundy at Hospice du Beaune, we made
Mm.
32 different Chardonnays and 45 different Pinot Noirs just in the
Oh
one
my
vintage
God.
that I made. So if that wasn't a crystal ball into what soils and, vineyard aspect and direction could do to a wine, there was just
Yeah.
no better learning for that. And so from there, I think this idea of really choosing a wine, but based on site, not just the wine, is something that I
Sure.
think I followed through every path. New Zealand for me was very focused on scale and volume and
Mm-hmm.
sustainability. You think about the amount of wine that tiny, tiny country makes. It's pretty impressive. They
Incredible.
are also the one region that I think of that has really incorporated modern technology into winemaking. So
Mm.
they're not bound by the same old, this is a traditional way to make wine. We store our barrels 5 times a week. We keep people here
Right.
till 10 p.m. They're not about that. They're about how do we make it efficient? How do we make it good? But how do we preserve quality at that highest level? And so I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was a really cool learning, because that brought the whole science engineering piece that we'd been really taught a lot at Davis about. So it connected those two pieces. And I think the real learning at Bordeaux for me was longevity. And you think about
Mm.
all of those perspectives here at Napa Wine Company. The family is getting ready to celebrate their 125th harvest next year. So talk about
Mm.
stewards of the land. These
Absolutely.
vineyard sites have been a part and parcel of this family and their life for decades, a century, more than a century now, which is so incredibly cool and unique to what I think of Napa. I mean, Napa is a newer region, in my opinion. It's not quite as old, but there are these beautiful multi-generational stories to be told from the valley. They were
Mm-hmm.
one of the first farmers to get CCF organic certified, one of the longest
Oh,
running
wow.
tenures, almost over 30 years of
Hmm.
farming organically certified fruit. So again, ties into that entire perspective of knowing your land, respecting it, and wanting to steward it for the future, not just about like how much fruit can I get now and then be done with it. So they're
Absolutely.
very cognizant of that. And then scale. Napa Wine Company is not just a winery where we make our wines with Ghost Block. It's also one of
Mm.
the original custom crush facilities. Bonded Winery number 9, the only single-digit bonded winery left in California.
Wow.
So
Oh my God.
history, this has been the facility that's been an incubator for so many different wineries and labels in Napa Valley. I mean, if I wanted to name drop, that list would be pretty long right now. And so I just think that all of these things kind of came together really beautifully and organically, and I'm very honored to be here now.
It is a perfect when you put it like that. I mean, seeing it, it's truly amazing how each you were in the ideal regions and places to learn each of those really important pieces of the way that it appears you're making the wine. It's incredible that you know that beautiful kind of mesh of everything came together in such an awesome way.
I mean, it's really cool to hear like the combination of kind of like the traditional French winemaking, New Zealand winemaking coming together in the United States. Haven't heard that before, like, right, like in people's experience, put together so succinctly. I do have to ask, though, like in your travels and experiences, like, we've had so many folks come on the show, and everyone's been so cool. Everyone's been so kind. But one thing we have heard a lot from folks, we've had people of color on the show, we've had women on the show, and everyone's kind of named like discrimination within the industry, especially in traditional European areas, in traditional wine corridors. Have you met any of those challenges in your travels? I mean, clearly, like you landed in like an incredible place. You were respected in the Napa community, so you rose beautifully well. Did you have to like smash through some walls to get there?
Did I have to meet assholes along the way? Yeah.
Thank you for
That's a very succinct
summarizing.
way of putting it.
I mean, I think that's true of, any industry, but you think about wine, then, people hold on to tradition as an excuse for many, many things. And
Yeah.
so I would say, yeah, there's been moments, but I think my personality has always also been the type where if you tell me I can't do something, then it just doubles down my resolve to do it. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
how I always took it. I've had people say, oh, I didn't know Indians make wine, or I didn't know Indians know how to make wine. I've had
Mm.
people say, oh, they let anyone touch wine, and in the back of my head, I
What?
go, I don't care. You're a very
Yeah.
insignificant part of my life. You're clearly not going to be a part of it moving forward anyways. So have your own opinion, and I'm
that.
just going to keep doing my thing anyways. I do think, though, that I was also fortunate to find some really incredible people that supported me and kind of helped me
Mm-hmm.
make the right connections that said, I'm going to open this door for you. I'm going to introduce you to this winemaker, or why don't I help connect you with this person in Bordeaux? Or while I was in Bordeaux, for example, I got picked up by Demtos that said, we know that somewhere deep down you want to think about contributing to the industry in India. So why don't we create this position for you by which we get what we want, which is a research on the market, and you get to go explore what your opportunities are. So, those things don't always happen. And so while the elephant in the room very much exists, I think that I also found good people along the way that really helped
Mm-hmm.
guide me and encourage me to move forward. I also deliberately seeked those kind of people out. So from the very beginning of my career, my father was actually kind of pivotal to that, because when I told him I wanted to do wine, his first question was, well, do women even do something like this? So, at that point I was like, oh my God, you're so old school. But he really did set me up for success, because he, in a way, pushed me to find the right women that were doing it. And I was reading, I would read about their journeys. I would read about what they did and how they came to where they were. A lot of informational interviews kind of stuff. And so I think that all of those things kind of added up. And to be honest, when you think about from a global perspective, Napa is a bit insulated. Like, this is, one of the regions that does have the highest percentage of women winemakers leading wineries. This is California in general, does kind of overtake all of the other regions when it comes to representation. And still, I'm not saying these numbers are impressive, but they're still better than other regions. So yeah, that is definitely an issue, but the glass is always half full, and there's always going to be good people that see talent and skill and passion and want to nurture it. I mean, Napa Valley was founded by people that immigrated and found a home, or tried to create a home away from home, and I think that culture very much exists in this valley.
Well, obviously super, grateful that you were able to find those people and push through and land where you are. It is obviously inspiring, and also I think like kind of glass half full. Like, we keep talking to amazing people, and I think wine has such a reputation of being like snobbish, but there's so many good people, and so I'm glad you were able to find those good people and keep moving forward. So,
Yeah, and I think a part of once you start to get to a place where you can then open a seat at the table is giving back. And I'm a part of a couple of different organizations that have been doing really good work. And it's exciting to see, more people of color, more women move forward in the industry and do the same, so that the snowball keeps getting bigger.
So, speaking of that and kind of the future of the next, generation of winemakers, Talk to us about Batonnage and Wine Unify. What is the main lesson you hope to pass on, and the main thing you want to teach there?
Oh, yeah, thank you. They're both very different, distinct organizations, which is what
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy. Batonnage is founded by Stevie Stacionis and Sarah Bray, and the idea was to stir up conversation. They pitched the first event in Samantha Sheehan's backyard, and I don't think they expected the number of women to show up for it. So, it was kind of a call to action, and that made you realize how much the conversation was needed. And so,
Mm-hmm.
as a part of my role there, we launched a mentorship program in 2021. And so it's been, it's now over 5 years of this beautiful mentorship program. And the idea was to help connect women at different levels in their career at different moments, because you're looking for different questions. When you're kind of starting out, wine can be intimidating, and it's tough to say, okay, how do I figure this out? Like, where do I start? And so we have
Right.
3 different levels to the program, and we help women ask the stupid questions, which they may be a little afraid to. And we've been able
Sure.
to foster almost over 2,300 connections through this
Wow.
mentorship program. Many women have found full-time job opportunities. They've, successfully switched careers within, either from sales to production or from retail to hospitality, whatever it is they were looking to do through this program. So it's just been very rewarding to see it. And it takes a beautiful group of a lot of amazingly talented women to make this happen. So that's been a very rewarding piece of just the work in that sphere. And then Wine Unify was founded kind of in 2020, right? As a reaction to, George Floyd and what was happening in the country at that moment. And, I just feel like in those kind of situations, the best thing to do is to do something and feel like you're contributing in a positive way. And so that's what Mary Margaret, Dylan Proctor, and Martin Reyes did when they founded Wine Unify. And the idea was, a lot of times the issue about getting into wine is the cost of the education. You have to, you think about what it costs to do a certification, and it may not necessarily be the actual fee. You have to be able to taste a certain number of wines. That's expensive. You
Yeah,
have to know
absolutely.
how you have to know, you have to learn about the aromatics and the descriptors, and that takes money, and it takes knowing the right people who can help educate you in the palate. And so that's what we wanted to do, was break down the barriers to access. So with Wine Unify, and thanks to our amazing executive director, Alicia Towns Franken, we've given over 200 scholarships for people of color who want to pursue the WSET levels. And the idea is, our dream is to finally have, the first person of color master of wine come through our community. It's growing. It's pretty strong. We have a few that are now at WSET level 4. So not very far away, and it's just cool it kind of renews your passion a little bit too, when you see these people coming into the industry so excited about the product and the lifestyle and what you can do and how you can talk about it and how you can geek out on, what these wines are and where they come from. So it kind of just reminds you how fortunate you are too to be a part of the industry. So it's been really fun to work with both of those organizations.
That's amazing. I mean, because it's such a. I mean, first of all, the overarching concept of both is just beautiful and perfect, and so necessary.
Yeah.
But just really the secondary aspect of just like the gatekeeping of cost is just so huge. And we've been to a couple different events now where everyone talks about like, oh, how do we get the next generation interested in wine? Like, it's cost.
Yeah.
Like people associate wine with expense. And
Mm-hmm.
man, talk about getting people interested in like learning about wine and becoming experts in wine. My God,
Yeah.
we do a wine podcast, and every time we look at getting the next level of certification, we're like, maybe next year.
Yeah.
Like,
It's not cheap.
no, not at all. So I mean, hats off to you with that, because that is just super necessary.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we only have a couple more questions. We're just looking at this wine. We want to get into it.
Okay.
So before, I would just like to ask a couple more things about Ghost Block itself. I was learning a little bit about it. I was reading the history. Could you tell our listeners a little bit more about the history of Ghost Block wine? Because there's some weird stuff in there.
Which part specifically? Like,
is there like an actual ghost story in Ghost Block wine?
the name. Yeah, this one's a really cool one. And I actually got to hear it directly from Andrew Hoxie. So he is third generation. His grandfather kind of started this entire family business. And Andrew Hoxie and his daughters, Morgan and Kendall, are the working members of the family right now. And so Andrew was, in his teens working on the family vineyard. They had, while they do own 600 acres 1,000 between Oakville and Yountville, 600 are planted to vineyards. And they really think of each of these vineyards as single vineyard sites. And so he had these names picked out, he knew the Morgan Lee Vineyard. He knew what blockhouse was going to be called. He knew, what rock cairn was going to be called because of the presence of the rock cairn. And he always struggled with the Ghost Block Vineyard because he just, it's such a amazing little corner in the back of the town of Yountville. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they used to just call it the Hillside Vineyard because they didn't have a name. And so he's always been kind of trying to think about what's the right name. And he walks into Poncha's. It's been a long day of farming. He drove the tractor to Poncha's, which was the local dive bar in the town of Yountville. And he gets out at the bar and he asks for a beer at the end of the day. And there was a couple of locals sitting there and they were talking about a ghost that they've seen walk through the vineyard. If I have to put things in perspective for you, so imagine there's a big rock cairn, okay? And there's this vineyard that is just in the perfect little nook right between this rock cairn around the back of Yountville. Across the road, which is Yount Road, is the Blockhouse Vineyard. And that's where George Yount planted the first vines of Napa Valley. He built a Kentucky-style blockhouse on the property, which is why the family now calls it the Blockhouse Vineyard. So his house is right there. The vineyard is across the street. And if you were to go right behind the rock is the cemetery where he's buried. So the description over the years has, and it's not just these few people at the bar that told Andrew about a ghost that they saw walking through the vineyard. There's been other sightings of it. And so I think Andrew likes to believe that it's the ghost of George Yount, walking between his vineyard and his house potentially. And that's where the name Ghost Block came from.
I love that so much.
Yeah. I love a good ghost story.
If you were to talk to him, he would
one?
also, if he was to tell you the story, he would also say, because of the aspect of the vineyard, the fog sits in a particular way and then the sunlight filters through in the early morning hours. So I can see why people think it's a ghost, but I like to believe there's a real ghost walking through.
Yeah. That's so much more fun. Yeah. We can analyze everything and probably get to another solution, but no.
I think it's pretty plausible. I mean, why not? That was where he was, and it's not just him. The Yountville Cemetery has a number of other notable names and, people that have called Napa their home for many, many years buried at there. So it could be really anyone, not just George. So I think Ghost Block's a pretty appropriate name for that vineyard.
I love that. And also, where else would you want to spend eternity? I mean, that sounds like a pretty good place to be roaming.
Hit the nail on the head. Yes. If I could spend, yes. Yeah, definitely.
Love that. So, a couple more questions here too. I do want to ask. So, I think I love that we're starting with a Sauv Blanc today. That's amazing. We're looking so forward to just trying everything that you sent over and trying the cab. And I think we kind of talked about it too. When people think about Napa Valley, I think their minds go to cabs directly a lot of the time. And specifically, I think people go to, big wines. They're kind of expecting it to be a big, I won't say overwhelming, but like in your face kind of a bold wine. So, my question to you is, how do you maintain the, just that elegance that Ghost Block specifically too is known for, and balance that against just, the typical expectation, the trends that are occurring in Napa wine? How do you maintain just that elegance?
Well, I think, sight has a lot to do with it. like I said, these vineyards have a really nice age to them, but they've also been farmed
Mm.
organically the last few years. Last year we were able to dry farm, which means we didn't irrigate. So you have these beautiful older vines, really, really deep
Yeah.
rooted in the soil at this point. They know
Hmm.
what they're doing. So you get that very beautiful natural balance in the vineyard. And then when you have a team that is so in tune, we have our own in-house vineyard crew as well. And
Mm.
so when you have a team that is so in tune with the vineyard, you know exactly what the response to any vintage related stuff should be. As a
Hmm.
winemaker, that's your best case situation. I mean, any chef will tell you that to make the best red sauce, he needs the best tomatoes. And that's
Right.
exactly what winemaking is. If I get the, best quality fruit that I can get from the vineyard, my work is significantly easier
Mm.
as a winemaker. But I think also with these wines in specific, and that very much aligns with my winemaking style, it's, you believe in the classics, and the
Mm.
classics never follow a trend. The big structured, robust Napa Valley wines, you think about that and the boom of the 90s and the 2000s that really dictated that style. Critics were
Hmm.
giving certain scores, so everyone started pushing in a direction. Completely different conversation to have. But I think what is really cool about the microclimate of Napa is you do have these amazing properties that have
Mm.
stuck to their guns. You think about winemakers
Hmm.
like Kathy Corson or Tom Farella that have been
Mm.
making wines the way they want to express these sites for years. And
Hmm.
that's what Ghost Block has been doing. So prior to me, Christy Colford was the winemaker here for 20 years. And so you have one person that's just gotten to know it, soup to
Mm.
nuts. They know exactly what they're doing. And so with these wines, we want to build classics, wines that talk about the vineyard and they tell you a story as you drink them, but they're balanced. They're meant for age. They are not, they're not defining my palate or they're not defining your palate. They're really about coming together, and they weave the table. They're not overpowering the food that you're eating with, or
Hmm.
they're not too light where you can't taste them. So for me, it's really about that, dancing on the sword's edge, if you will. You want to find that perfect balance between expressing the fruit and building wines for ageability.
You already talked so much about, sustainability and, kind of where the vineyard is and kind of all the work that's already being done. I guess that's my big question is like, what's next? What's next for the work that you are doing there, like looking to the future, especially when you think about big things like climate change and kind of all the unpredictability of the market. Like,
Mhm.
do you have your sights kind of set on the direction, or are you all just kind of trying to like maintain and just kind of build on what's there now?
A bit of both. I mean, when you're in a challenging period of the industry, and, mind you, if you look at the history of wine, these kind of cyclical downturns, upturns are very normal. We've seen this happen before, maybe not to the kind of extent that it's happening right now, but it's not unknown either. And I think that at times like this, obviously you do have to do a little bit of a pivot to try and see what you need to adjust to the market conditions. But at the same time, these are the times you build for the future. These are the times you can take a little bit of a breather and say, what do we do next? And so I think
Mm.
with Ghost Block, the brand in particular, we have these amazing single vineyards. We want to keep building on the age of the vineyard. We don't want this like replant story every couple of years. I think the Sauvignon Blanc is from the Burgundy vineyard. The Zinfandel comes from the Palissa vineyard, which is the youngest vineyard in the acquisition, in the family's acquisition. It came along with the acquisition of Napa Wine Company. But Zinfandel, again, as a variety, is such a cool story to tell when you think about American winemaking. The
Mm.
Cabernet comes from two very distinct sites. Previously, we used to call it, the estate was kind of the Napa Valley Cabernet because it was a blend between the two vineyards. Now we're really focusing it on the estate is our Oakville vineyard, and then the Ghost Block single vineyard is from our Yountville Ghost Block single vineyard. So really talking about making these wines distinctive and just continuing to build on the reputation that Ghost Block's been able to acquire. That's the goal, kind of keep moving forward. I do think that this moment in the industry, I see it as a positive because I think this is when
Mm-hmm.
the authenticity of your story will really shine through. You think
Mm-hmm.
about the brands that are hurting, and a lot of those are the ones that, are on the grocery shelves that may necessarily not have been always tied or had real storytelling behind it. And brands like Ghost Block and families like the ones that are behind Ghost Block are here to stay. They've been
Mm-hmm.
doing this a long time. They plan to do it a long time. And that's what consumers want to hear, right? They want to hear those amazing, cool stories, and they want to get to know the vineyard, and they want to know why you're doing it. And I think from that point of view, we have a lot to share and a lot to tell. So, I'm not worried about it. I think we
Mm-hmm.
just keep the ship steady, stay the course, and let the wines speak for themselves.
I love that. Well, you know what? That seems like the perfect time to let
To
the wine
taste some
speak
wine.
for itself.
Yes,
Look at that. Look at
I
that transition.
agree.
Fantastic.
Hey,
Well, first, Priyanka, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. We
yeah,
truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
beautiful.
And now I'm going to ask you to share a little bit more. So, y'all at Ghost Block were super kind to send us 4 bottles of wine.
Mhm.
We're going to be drinking one with you today that you're going to lead us through. And then we're going to be reviewing the rest over the coming weeks with our listeners. And so today you are going to be leading us through the Sauvignon Blanc. Would you mind telling the listeners a little bit about what we're drinking today?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited to talk about this wine in particular, just because I finished the blending on the 2025 vintage just yesterday. So it's very
Oh my
much,
gosh.
fresh in my mind and thinking about what we want to do with this wine. And, I can talk a little bit about what we're doing with the 2025 vintage. So the 24 vintage is, I think, a very special one because it marks the intersection of Christy and myself. So this is kind of her final vintage that I just get to pay homage to. Finished bottling it. This comes from the Morganley Vineyard. So this one is located in the south of Yountville. It's about a 30-acre Sauvignon Blanc vineyard, and we have some incredible, other wineries that also source from our vineyard. So the family is farmers first, and then kind of builds their brands once they knew the sites, then the vineyards they wanted to express. So the Morganley Vineyard is planted to St. George rootstock, which is just this beautiful rootstock. It gives so much depth and complexity and concentration to wines. This is Clone 1, all planted in 1978. So really
Oh, wow.
beautiful, older Sauvignon Blanc. I mean, some of these vines, guys, I'm not joking. When you walk the vineyard, they're like mini trees. They're,
Oh my gosh.
it planted in these valley-rich alluvial soils, and they have established themselves. It's so cool to
Uh-huh.
see. The Sauvignon Blanc clone is really beautiful, really aromatic, lots of tropicality on it. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
what we want, that it should shine through in this wine as well. So you'll see, on the nose, it's not a oaked Sauvignon Blanc from Napa
Mm-hmm.
Valley. It's a very kind of tropical, fresh, energy forward Sauvignon Blanc, lots of peach and nectarine. You'll get some Meyer lemon. If you're into tropical
Oh
fruits,
yeah.
there's some green mango, guava, and we make it to preserve that vitality. So it's all stainless steel fermentation. We do a little bit of a longer contact on lees with the
Mm-hmm.
Sauvignon Blanc, and that's what builds that richness and texture. When you smell the wine, you don't expect it to be as textured and have the length
Mm-hmm.
that this wine does, and it's that yeast contact that allows us to do it. So I think it's a really, really fun Sauvignon Blanc. In 2025, we put a portion of it in these concrete eggs. So we
Uh-huh.
have a little bit of stainless steel mixed with concrete eggs.
Oh
The
wow.
vineyard is picked over 3 different picks. So we start off really early, and then we do 2 consecutive picks, and we get a really nice spread of aromatics
Huh.
as the fruit ripens on the vine. And so that's what that playfulness that you're seeing on the Sauvignon Blanc, that's
Wow.
where it comes from.
I'm so intrigued by, talking about the multiple pickings too, just
Uh-huh,
to find exactly what you're looking for. I mean,
uh-huh.
gosh, what are you looking for, in the fruit to kind of help guide when you're picking this? I'm trying to match up, you're I imagine, in the field to some extent, or trying what's being harvested at that time,
Uh-huh.
and trying to match that up with the overall vision that you have for the wine. Kind of how do you
Mhm.
balance those two things?
Oh my gosh, thanks for asking that question. It's the toughest thing. That's where, talk about nerve wracking. That's where
Sure.
your nerves are racked. In tougher vintages, or like in a challenging vintage when your decision to pick is influenced by, what's happening, like whether if it's a heat
Sure.
wave that's coming up or you have rain on the forecast or, a fire. Gosh, that's been an
Yeah.
issue in Napa too. At that point, I think you're looking for the biggest positives. You're like, okay, what can I do with this? And then let's bring it. It's more of a preservation and just like bring it in kind of point. In the beautiful vintages, in the vintages where everything lines up, at that point, it's almost like a blank canvas and you're trying to see what you can do best. When you have an older vineyard, you also have, there might be certain sections of the vineyards that have been planted at a different time. Old vines decay, so you have what we call spot plantings, and those ripen differently than the older vines.
Sure.
Depending on the vintage, you could have a difference between the morning side and the evening side. And this vineyard is particularly special because it's all planted north-south. So you do get a lot of that morning afternoon side difference. And then, like I said, there's a difference as the fruit is maturing on the vine. So your earlier pick is really about acid and energy. And you're really trying to get that beautiful Meyer lemon, citrus, kind of note that's going to form the core of your wine. The second and the third picks is what adds to that complexity. So usually with the second pick, you'll start to get a little bit more of that tropicality. You get a little bit more of the peaches, the nectarines, maybe a bit of honeydew melon. And then with the last pick, which would be kind of your highest bricks at this point, that's where you'll start to get a little bit more of the volume. You'll get more of that complexity of the different flavors. But then your aromatics also shift, maybe a little bit more apricot, a little bit more riper peach, going, into honeydew melon. So there's a shift in the aromatics, but when you put it all together, it just tells you what the vineyard is able to do and the story of it. And it also kind of, I think, helps pick things at target as opposed to picking everything at one point and being like, oh, this section wasn't, quite as ready, but I have to get it. And that's the advantage of an in-house crew. You can go out and say, I just want, this point to this point, and that's all you want to bring in. The other advantage is when you have these different picks, you can play around with how you're fermenting them. So you can look at different tanks. Like I said, we did a portion of it in concrete eggs. You could think about maybe I'll put something in really neutral white barrels, depending on what the flavors are like that's developing that year. So it just gives you an opportunity to have fun and create a lot of different components. So when you go to sit at the blending table, you're not just with one wine that you don't have anything else to add to. You can really kind of build the wine that you're wanting to create and wanting consumers to enjoy.
You're going to make Joel quit his job and become a winemaker.
And move to
100%.
Napa.
Like,
Well, we
like,
can use help.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh my God. Don't tempt me. I'm out there.
Camera
I
turns
love-
off. Joel's on a plane.
Yeah, exactly. No, but that's just thanks so much for going into that. It's always so, such a treat and such an honor to be able to hear directly from the winemaker, about things like that. So thank you so much. And I'm constantly, impressed and just so intrigued by that intersection. I know everybody talks about it. This isn't anything new, but that intersection of the art and the science, it's just, it's a beautiful thing. And hearing about the process is really cool. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, like I said, it's what kind of attracted me to it, because once you know the science behind it, you can think about what you want to do, from fermentation temperatures point of view, or am I going to go native yeast, or am I going to inoculate with something? How much ml am I going to push through the wine? So this one's about 50% malolactic. So that's kind of also what adds a little bit of that creaminess and texture to the wine. There could be a warm vintage where you just choose to not do any malolactic at all because you really want to preserve that acidity and energy in the wine. So that's the science portion talking, that's going to tell you how to get to where you want to get to. But then you're the one making those decisions along the way to try and, you always envision what you want to make, and then nature gives you what you're going to make, which sometimes are the perfect
That'd
match.
make a great t-shirt.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, thank you. I have a lot of quotes.
No, but that's
Um,
gosh, I mean, just that variable of nature
Yeah.
too, and yeah, gosh, working with that as well. Jeez.
yeah, and that's the most humbling part about
Mm.
being in this industry. Ultimately, you're farming and you
Mm-hmm.
have
Yep.
one shot at it. It's not like the fruit is growing throughout the year round. You
Right.
have one shot, one harvest, and that's it. That's going to define the entire vintage. So when you take that into perspective, any winemaker that goes on and on about their skills, like ultimately, no, you are making what nature is telling you to make. There's certain decisions along the way, but the
Mm-hmm.
vintage is very much going to dictate the kind of wine, especially if you're trying to do it, in my opinion, in that authentic way, with the kind of wine that you present to the consumers. And I think that's
Absolutely.
the coolest thing about it. No two vintages are the same, and when I got into the industry, I used to get so impressed because you'd hear these winemakers talk about, 2011 and '01 was like
Mm-hmm.
this and '05 was like, and I was always so just blown away by how do you remember what happened
Sure.
in each vintage? And I can tell you, you remember each vintage because you
Because it's
remember
such a
Uh-huh.
big
exactly
deal.
what happened because
Yeah.
no two vintages are the same. You may have a similarity in like the
Sure.
pace of things or the yield or how things were coming, but every vintage is defined by some cool event or some cool story. And I think that's what makes it fun.
Well,
Sounds
because you're
fun and
in it
cool and
too. It's not
You're
incredibly
just
stressful.
you're in it to win
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Wild.
mean, like you are in that minute. You are making those decisions with what you have right then too. I'm sure. Yeah, that locks you in.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah, I
cool.
mean, you think about that in as opposed to beer, which you
Mm-hmm.
can brew throughout the year with a very consistent product and a very
Yep.
consistent methodology. Like, and that's what I try and explain to consumers. I'm like, any kind of hard alcohol or beer, in
Mm-hmm.
many ways, the goal is consistency. You want it to taste the same. You don't want it to change. In
Mm-hmm.
wine, if your goal is consistency, then somewhere along the way, you're losing the story of what you're trying to do. So, for me,
Absolutely.
you want every vintage to taste distinctive, but you want there to be this thread in terms of the style and the vision of
Mm-hmm.
what you're trying to do. But every vintage should tell you the story of what happened.
I really
That's
appreciate that you
amazing.
named like the tropical aromatics in there because that was like the first thing I got in there. That was a little bit different than what you normally get, like on a Sauvignon Blanc. A little bit sometimes when I opened up like that oaky Napa Sauvignon Blanc, I was like, "Ooh, this is a little bit more tropical forward than I was expecting," and that's kind of nice.
Yeah, and this one is such a fun one. Like during fermentation, it almost becomes kind of like a white floral jasmine green tea, kind
Mm-hmm.
of notes when it's fermenting. And so we love that. And I think it's a very classic wine because, there's such a, obviously that's Chardonnay when you talk about the more richer whites, but I think with the overall palate of the consumers, they love whites that are playful and have a lot of energy. But with, I think, the least contact that we do, it also gives this wine a really nice elegance. It makes it much more
Absolutely.
food friendly. For example, this wine holds up really
Mm-hmm.
beautifully on the dinner table with fish courses, spring dishes kind of thing. So, I think it really captures what the Morganley Vineyard is. The complexity that you have comes from that older vineyard, the age that we have. And with us picking it a bit on the earlier side, yeah, that really nice acidity, that super nice freshness
Yeah.
and energy on it too.
I love just the word you used, playful, is so perfect here because it does have all of those things going on. That light, kind of lifted feeling to it, that acidity, but the unexpected part for me here too is that just that body, that elegant body that is, carrying the whole thing through as well. And those two things, interacting with each other and providing that overall mouthfeel is a really, really cool experience.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of times when we have, we shorten it lovingly to like Savi B, thanks to a friend that comes on the show often,
Yeah.
and like, Sauvignon Blanc often just gets kind of reduced to this cheaper porch poundery drink outside when it's hot weather, and this does not feel like that to me. I
No.
mean, and that's wonderful, right? It's always really great to find something that is going to break someone's expectations of a varietal that they are used to, right? Handing someone a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, being like, you like Sauvignon Blanc? Try this.
Yeah.
And have it just kind of smash the expectations that they have for a wine that they might associate with something that is inexpensive or cheap.
Hmm.
And so this is, Joel stole it right out of my mouth. Like that mouthfeel and heaviness is just unexpected, and it's just adding like a whole new level to this. It's playful, but it's also like, I don't know, fancier. It's like the wrong word, or I don't know, but feels, yeah,
No, it's that longer
elevated.
mouthfeel. You know,
Yeah.
when you think about classic wines, you like or Burgundies, for example, you taste a Chablis versus like a Grand Cru Burgundy. There's a difference there, right, in the texture and richness. And I think with this specific one of with this specific Sauvignon Blanc, what we're trying to do is really bring those two together, because you have that really bright acidity, that almost pop of lemon. I love when white wines make you salivate. You know, for me, like that is what just gets me, like that minerality that just leaves you salivating for more. And I think the acidity on this one really does that. So
I'm just sitting here. Every time I go for a sip, I feel like I'm noticing something different. And it's really, really fun as I'm having sips over here. And I think you mentioned just that tea aspect of it as well. I'm focusing on that, and that just again makes for such an enjoyable experience, because it's almost like there's that weight from sitting on the leaves that's in there that we've talked about, the playfulness of the acidity, but all throughout it's just this lovely, refreshing tea kind of vibe that's going through the whole thing as well. It's just I didn't want to let us move on without calling out that very, very cool aspect of this as well.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. And I was just going to toss in a couple more details. So I noticed this is 13.5% ABV, a little higher ABV for a Sauvignon Blanc, I noticed. So I'm going to keep that in mind before I drink the entire bottle. We're recording a little bit earlier than usual.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask is what is the retail for this bottle normally?
So the Ghost Block Sauvignon Blanc is $35.
Wonderful. And this is something that Joel harps on often, and I want to say it here because it's so important. This is one of those examples to me. It's just like, just spend the extra couple of dollars. Right? Like this is something we talk about. We talk about on the show often. We just had a big challenge about this. It's like there's so much Sauvignon Blanc out there that is not good, and
there's so much wine out there that's not
so
good.
Much wine out there is not good, right? And it's not good. It's mass produced, and it's in this price range to make it feel very accessible. And it's just like just spend a couple more dollars.
Thank you.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
and to support a family run and operated vineyard with a ton of history.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, to just officially put a stamp on it before I, tell people that they should buy something, we should probably, put our stamp of approval on it, Joel. I don't know, Joel, I don't know how you're feeling right now, but as I mentioned at the beginning, Priyanka, we are a wine review show, so we are going to review this wine in front of you, which I know is a little bit awkward, and I apologize ahead of time.
That's why you do it at the end of the show, as opposed
to right. So you can hang up on us in a fit of fury if you need to. But just for the listener at home, real quick, if you're new to us, here on Stop Wasting Your Wine, this show, we don't believe in numbers. We're more about vibes. So our categories are as such. The wines that we love the most, these are our must-share wines. These are wines that are exceptionally good bottles of wine that have some just a little bit extra to them. Our other wines are solid pours. These are just good bottles of wine. Our casual sippers are enjoyable, but not necessarily memorable bottles of wine. And then if there's a bottle of wine that is overpriced, low quality, or just generally undrinkable, it is a waste of your wine, and we will call it as such. And then each of us have our imaginary wine fridge that we put our 3 favorite bottles of wine per year in. And I think right now we all have 1 bottle in it, so we have 2 empty spots. Joel, I'm hosting, so I get to make you go first. How are you feeling about this wine? Is there anything last minute you would like to toss out there? And how would you like to label said wine sitting in front of the winemaker herself?
No pressure.
And I'm not just saying this because you're here, Priyanka, but I'm down to 1 spot in my wine fridge. This is so fun and enjoyable. So one of the things too that we always we always talk about, and what we find so cool about some wines that we drink is when we can be drinking it for an extended period of time, and every time we go back to it, we're finding something new. We're, having a new experience, and it's, ultimately changing for us over time, whether it's our palate changing a little bit or the wine changing. It's just so cool. And, I think for that to be happening with a Sauvignon Blanc, a beautifully crafted Sauvignon Blanc that I think stands out amongst the rest, is just such a cool experience. So this is going straight into my wine fridge. One thing I want to say about this wine is you mentioned that it goes really well with food, and 100%. But what's really cool about this is just enjoyable on its own. There's enough to explore. There's enough to talk about. So just sitting down and wanting to have an experience with a really nice glass of wine is totally possible with this wine too. So love it. Thank you so much for bringing this to us, Priyanka. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh, thank you. And I want to say you don't have to stop at one glass.
No, totally. I think I poured a second one here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron, what do you think?
Joel, I feel like you do this to me every time. You do this to me every time. Every time I feel like I have a shocking, wonderful moment that's going to just be lovely. You steal my thunder. I am also putting this in my wine fridge.
I love
this
it.
This is absolutely delightful. Priyanka, thank you so much. And I will say, I don't think I have put a Sauvignon Blanc in my wine fridge in the past, either in the past 2 years. So this is my first Sauvignon Blanc in my wine fridge, I believe. It's just, it's so complex and so good. And again, I think we've talked about in the past, like, we've put some wines with like some pretty hefty price tags in our wine fridges, but we're always looking for just really good wines that are really accessible. And if we're going to find a really complex, delicious wine that has a $35 price tag, like, you cannot, again, in this climate, and in this, like, when we're trying to sell people on like why they should be looking at wine again, like, this is the kind of thing people should be looking for. You don't have to, sell your firstborn to enjoy wine. Like, there's really good wine out there at an accessible price point that isn't like mass produced, grocery store wine. And so, thank you so much for saying this our way. We truly appreciate it. There's two wine. Colin's going to be really mad, by the way. He missed this interview. Like, he would be nerding out so hard right now. He's going to listen to this, and he's just going to be angry.
I feel
and
like
he has to edit it too. So.
What's that?
I was just gonna say, and he has to edit it too, and sit here and listen to our awesome conversation.
Well, hopefully he'll enjoy a glass of wine as he edits it.
Yes,
he'll happy sad drink this bottle. He'll drink it. He'll really, really enjoy it. And he'll be sad he didn't get to.
Well, you'll have to let me know how it is, because I feel like a contestant on The Voice, and like 2 of the judges have turned, and now I need to know if the 3rd judge turned or not. So he's gonna have to tell me how he enjoyed it.
We'll make sure he records a little part of it, and we'll drop it into the episode for sure.
There you go.
All right, Priyanka, thank you so much. Before we let you go, we normally play a little game, and I'm going to make this really short and simple at the end. We call this game Pinot or Chardonnay.
Okay.
Get it? And it's basically just a yes or no, and I'm going to base this on our ghost conversation from earlier today.
Okay.
So let me ask you, if someone came and visited Ghost Block and they asked you point blank, are the ghosts real? Chardonnay, you're telling them, yes, the ghosts are real. Or Pinot, you're like, no, there's no ghosts.
Chardonnay.
Yes.
Love 100%.
Keep it alive.
Yeah.
It's too cool of like a lore to kibosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I don't walk that vineyard in the dark.
Oh, really?
Well, because, somewhere deep down, I think it's true. And, while I don't think that they would be harmful or anything, I just, that's their time in the vineyard, and I'll come when the sun's out and do my thing. So
I love that.
Yeah. I'm not a very skeptic person, and I have no desire to snoop around that vineyard at night. I would love to come visit y'all at the daytime.
Oh yeah, no, and it's such a beautiful vineyard. Our in-house crew starts picking at daybreak, and so we get to go walk it when they're picking it. And of course, anytime you walk this vineyard, it's just so cool and different. It's these beautiful rolling hills in this nook of Yountville, with an aspect to the valley that not a lot of people get to see. And you just walk up and down, and time moves a bit slower, and you can kind of immerse yourself in the sound of the birds. There's about the balance of the acres that the family owns that haven't been planted are contiguous to the Ghost Block Vineyard. So there's, longhorns that
Wow.
live and they free range on this hill. So depending on the day, you may have some company as you're walking the vineyard, or you may not.
So cool.
It just reminds you of where you are, a small part of a very big cycle of life. So it's a very cool vineyard.
Sounds beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, can you just let the listener know if they want to learn more about Ghost Block, if they want to order wine, if they want to reach out to y'all, how can they reach out? How can they connect with y'all?
So our website is ghostblockwine.com. We also have an Instagram handle, I think at Ghost Block Wines. If you're in Napa, we're located in Oakville, right across Oakville Grocery, a very, very common tourist stopover for a quick bite. And we're literally across the road from that. You can book an appointment. You can call us. We can see if we can schedule you in, same day. There's a couple of different options of what you can choose from a tasting point of view. You can also do a vineyard tour in our blue Pinsgauer. You through all of our vineyards and you get a taste of wine at each vineyard. So there's a couple of different options and ways in which you can come and enjoy Ghost Block and then the family brands of Elizabeth Rose and Oakville Winery as well.
Amazing. Priyanka, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. This was super fun.
Cool.
Awesome. All right, listener, honestly, check them out. Check out Ghost Block. Check out all their wineries. It's amazing. And listen up for the next few weeks. We're going to be drinking through a bunch of their wines. And if they're anything like the Sauvignon Blanc, you're in for a treat. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Very excited. And remember, stop wasting your wine.
Bye, y'all.